Hi, my name is Amanda Smith. I am an artist and assistant professor at Missouri State University. I am thrilled to share my exhibition Restless Sleepers with you at McMaster Gallery at the School of Visual Art and Design at the University of South Carolina. I am trained as a painter, but in the past 3 years, I've also begun working with quilting techniques as an extension of my painting practice. I have always been interested in combining and synthesizing disparate spaces and elements. So, regardless of the material that I work with, I tend to work with an approach that is somewhat akin to collage. My paintings have long been about how we perceive and experience spaces, particularly landscapes. And working in textiles has given me a new opportunity to work with commodified representations of how we interact with the natural world through things like camouflage, technical, and novelty fabrics. These fabrics are kind of really kitschy simulacra of the natural world. So, as an artist, I really love them. But they also really communicate a lot about how we link our identities to the natural world, how we try to blend or separate them from natural spaces, and how we commodify that natural space. In 2019, I attended three different artist residencies, which all happened to be along the Appalachian Mountain Range. The first was in eastern Tennessee, the second was in central Maine, and the third was in southern Quebec. Each of these residencies were incredible opportunities to concentrate on my work in the studio and to meet and connect with other artists and writers. But in addition, I also had the chance to connect with place and to talk with community members about their experience in these places. The forests, mountains, or river in each of these locations were the central feature of local history, identity, and economy. And so, just as important as my working time in the studio were the times that I would walk or swim in these landscapes, as I got to better know these natural spaces, but also the particularities and peculiarities of ownership, access, and restriction to these spaces. One thing that I began to take particular notice of was signage that demarcated private property or public trail access. These signs have a strange visual presence. They are colored and located for overt visibility, that's their job, but they are placed so frequently or left out in the elements for so long that they kind of get absorbed by the landscape and become almost like a benign feature of the space. Each region has its own laws and customs regarding the signage, and in some locales the signage is almost like a colloquial or vernacular kind of thing. Um, so, like, rather than having an obvious posted sign with text, for example, a painted rectangle of a very particular color of purple can serve as a legal property marker. While I would take walks, these signs would catch my attention in different ways. Sometimes they would read a little like a painting exhibition in the woods, converge with my internal monologue, or with the lyrics of songs I was listening to in my headphones. In Maine, I started creating and posting my own versions of these signs with these conflated messages and thinking about the word post as not just alluding to our physical public and private space barriers, but also these divisions on our digital platforms. These signs signal boundaries, but they also have real and sometimes tragic consequences. A couple in Maine visited my studio and shared that their niece had been killed by a hunter on her own property, and that the hunter was generally protected from significant consequence due to somewhat gendered expectations of visibility on the part of the property owner. Public commentary around this case frequently chided the victim for how she was dressed, and not the hunter for not doing due diligence to confirm his permission to hunt on the land. A month after I returned from that residency, my friend Barbara was fired at by a restaurant owner for skipping rocks, while black, at the restaurant's riverfront in Omaha. There was no legal repercussion for the business owner. At the same time, I relocated to Springfield, Missouri for a teaching position. The town is home of Bass Pro Shops and a wooded region with a history of subsistence and recreational hunting. Because of these factors, the gear for outdoor recreation is an extremely prominent part of local culture and seems a lot more like a symbol of identity rather than a practicality. It's regular attire at the grocery store, decal on vehicles, and a novelty print on restaurant or airport carpeting. Increasingly, I could only read these coded forms of communication in natural spaces as entirely conditional and as badges of perceived threat and power. I proposed Restless Sleepers with all of these ideas in mind. I also proposed it before the COVID-19 pandemic had hit. As I developed the show, the world changed. While these divisions and questions of access and safety remained, we added new restrictions to how we navigated space. Borders closed. Many people spent more time in natural spaces. We began wearing barriers on our faces, and they were politicized. We were lonely and bored, worried and divided. I went on a lot of walks and began making a series of paintings of trail markers and debris and signage. These paintings began to feel almost like portraits, small paintings in space that reflected a mood. Rather than being signs to help navigate space, they became markers for which I could recognize how lost or stuck I felt in general, and that I think many people felt collectively. This show is a culmination of all of these things. Works that take on forms for rest, sleep, and protection, like sleeping bags, cushions, and hammocks, but that possess a restless or anxious energy, and questions about where we are and where we might go from here.